Main character stage of life. Now we're kind of getting into the structural parts of brainstorming. And what's fun about this is that we're not necessarily getting into outlining. These are just the anchors of the actual, I'm trying to use a word other than structure, but these are the anchors of the structure. So main character stage of life. This is in reference to the beginning of your story. But what are they on the verge of? Or did something just happen that was big? So examples like in Legally Blonde, we see the world that Reese Witherspoon's character is living in, and relatively quickly, she is broken up by her boyfriend. Even though she thought her boyfriend was going to be like forever love, they're going to get married, and they're going to have this perfect life. He breaks up with her. So that's what I mean by like there's a life moment that is either just happened, or we see happen, or is about to happen. They're going to get a promotion, or they were just fired. They're going to turn 16 years old. There's a stage of life that we're coming into. Then 2, how is their flaw affecting their regular life? So their life before the big situational setup. I call it the setup event. Some people call it the inciting incident. I have an argument as to why those two are different. Doesn't matter. So we want to see our character in the world prior to any major plot introduction. If you start your movie with or a TV show like Stranger Things, where we see the scientist running down the hallway and obviously everything's really weird and gross, and then he runs into the elevator and then he waits, and then the monster grabs his head and pulls him up through the elevator, and like that's the opening scene. We have no character connection to that scene. It's all plot and mysterious. We don't know what happened. That's fine. You can start your movie or story or TV show with that kind of scene, but it's not going to have a direct connection to the main character yet. We need to see and understand and feel for who this character is, their type, their beliefs, their desires. Why can't they have what they want? And then also how they're emotionally reacting to all of this. Are they, kind of acting like a victim? Are they overprotective? We want to be showing that, because it's defining in a subtle way, sometimes not so subtle, but really the theme of the story. We're going to see this type of character, and we, the audience, inherently know this character is going to go through all these things in the second act. We don't know necessarily how they're going to be connected, because it's still like the first 4 or 5 pages of the script. But we can assume, okay, they're probably not going to be this way by the end of the movie, And then 3, like I said, what do they desire, want, wish for? Why can't they have it? We want to really understand, and this has nothing to do with plot. This is all just their own personal stuff, right? All right, moving to the next one, secondary character effect. And effect. So you want to be brainstorming these things about the secondary character. Basically, this is the second lead. This is the Samwise to Frodo. This is Doc Brown to Marty. It's just about every story has some kind of secondary character that's going to be going on this adventure and journey with the main character. You can have multiple. You don't only need one. But you want to be brainstorming their flaw or flaws, how it's different than your main characters. That's really important. They don't have to be opposites. Like in Finding Nemo, you have Marlin and Nemo. Marlin and Dory. Marlin can't let go of anything. Dory literally forgets everything every 5 minutes. That's an exaggerated example, but it's a nice example of the differences between main character and secondary, because we see why the secondary character kind of needs to be in the life of this main character, at least within the story that we're experiencing. What do they believe? How do they show it? Consideration of where and how this relationship is going to end up, because this relationship is almost, if not equally as important as the plot storyline, because every story, and if there's anything I hope that you write down, hopefully you write down a lot of notes today, but it's an important note to make, is that every story is a relationship story. Even in Castaway, he had a relationship with the island. He had a relationship with Wilson. He had a relationship with Helen Hunt. He just wasn't with them other than Wilson. So everything is, we evolve as humans because of our relationships with other people. So we want to think about how and why is this relationship with the secondary character so important? And what are they going to learn from each other? How could they fall apart? What are the differences between the two, and how could those differences create conflict? The secondary character is very similar to the opponent or villain or whatever kind of, antagonist you have in the story, because they're both kind of doing the same thing, at least from a metaphorical standpoint or a meaning standpoint. The secondary character is, pushing the main character into situations that the main character might find dangerous or difficult in order to achieve a goal. The opponent is pushing and moving the main character into situations that will change that main character in order to stop them from achieving the goal. So there's a little bit of a fine line, and that's why in romantic comedies you see quite often that, like in When Harry Met Sally, you have Sally be both the opponent and the secondary character, and that's totally fine. She kind of flips. There's going to be an opposing nature within that secondary character, but the effect that that character has on the main character is what's so important. So consideration of where and how this relationship will end up. You want to be thinking that, because we don't want to forget that this is a relationship story. I don't care what movie or show you're writing. TV is even more important. The main reason people tune into a show is because, like, hey, cool, Wednesday Addams. I like the kind of the world and the gothic nature, and her character seems kind of funny, and just all the weird characters and creatures that'll be involved in the show. But we'll keep watching the show because of the relationship storylines. Yes, because the plot's cool and we want to solve a mystery or something. But the only reason it's enjoyable is because of the characters that are involved. We want to know what the secondary characters' personal goals are. What do they want just emotionally outside of the plot? How their personality differs from the main character. Their role in pursuing the goal. Literally, what are they going to do? And like I said at the bottom, at the heart of every story is a meaningful relationship. Let me check the comments just to see if I have anything. Okay, no comments. So either that means you're all bored out of your mind, or you're furiously taking notes. Hopefully not too furious. But if you have questions, everybody, post them, put them into the comment section. Scott will star them, and I will answer those questions at the end. And it can be about anything. It doesn't have to only be about this lecture. It could be about the industry, about the screenplay contest, whatever. Well, we'll just keep going here as maybe you think up some questions. Okay, opponent with a motive. We want to understand, that's what I mean by with a motive. Why are they doing what they're doing? Is your antagonist a villain or just an opposing force? Is it an opponent? Is it a rival? We want to be able to differentiate that, because I don't necessarily like the word antagonist, because it's just a little too nebulous, a little too vague. I mean, almost every character in a story is going to be antagonizing to the main character. The whole point of the story is for the main character to evolve at least a little. So we need antagonizing forces. So for your opponent, is it a villain? If it's a villain, then you have Hans Gruber, from Die Hard. We've got Ursula from The Little Mermaid. You have like kind of a world-dominating type of attitude and motive behind your character. Not every opponent is that way. If you have a mother-daughter relationship like in Lady Bird or something, she's not a villain, the mom. She's opposing, and she's an opponent to the main character, but mainly because of what the main character wants. The opponent, her mom, doesn't want the same thing for her. So there's an opposing force. What do they believe and how do they show it? Just like the secondary character, we want to know that about your opponent. What's the opponent's weakness? Think about not just for reasons of plot, but can we have at least empathy in a little way for that opposing character? Do we understand where they're coming from and why they are who they are? Empathy and sympathy are two very different things. What do they want? Why do they want it? Basically, that's the motive. What specific obstacle are they placing in front of the main character? Or obstacles? Are they actively going to place this boulder in that road? Or are they going to, blow up their house? Or are they going to do sneaky little things to manipulate them? We want to be thinking along the lines of what are they actually actively going to do? Even though you may not know exactly how it's going to play out structurally or what the scenes and moments are going to be doing, we need to spend the time at least thinking and brainstorming those. And then, of course, their relationship to the main character. That's pretty straightforward. Do they know each other? Have they never met? All those ideas. The opponent represents what the main character is trying to emotionally overcome. That's really the big piece of this slide. I should probably make that a little bit bigger. But when we think in terms of metaphor and meaning, almost always, whatever the opponent or whoever the opponent is, it's going to represent something that the main character is or has always been afraid to overcome or confront in their own lives in some way. It doesn't have to be literal, but that's why in the 12th sequence at the end of your movie anyway, that battle scene occurs. I call it the battle scene sequence. where we see that the main character has to confront this main opponent for whatever reason. Of course, it's relative to your project, but even in When Harry Met Sally, what does Harry have to do? He has to go and confront Sally and admit, I'm in love with you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. That's something he never would have been able to admit early on in the story, because he's changed so much because of his relationship with Sally. But also Sally represents vulnerability and openness and honesty and love and, you know, all of the things that Harry has never been, even though it isn't stated outright. We just see that occur throughout the story. So we want to be thinking along these lines about your opponent.